Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogans. Kyle Wood is back on the show today, and we're going to talk all things art history, specifically how we get our kids engaged with art history, and we will share some ideas on how we make it exciting for them. Before we dive in, though, I want to say something quickly about art history during Black History Month. Now, reason being, I've received a lot of questions from listeners over the past month or so about which artists are good for Black History Month or which artists I like to share with my students during Black History Month, which is fine, and I'm happy to share, but we really need to be sharing Black artists throughout the year, okay? Not just in February. We need to be teaching about Black artists throughout the year. And the work does not stop at the end of the month. You know, we can continue that education for our students throughout the year. And this specific podcast today is taking a look at art history in general, just a bigger overview about how we engage our students and how we make it entertaining. But if you were looking for a resource to get you started for Black History Month, if you're looking for Black artists, I did a podcast in 2020 featuring 17 Black artists to know, and we will link to that. So feel free to use that as a starting point if that's something you need for the rest of this month and for the rest of this year as well. But in the meantime, Kyle Wood and I will spend today's episode talking about our favorite art history activities and how we try to make art history engaging for our kids. So let me bring him on now. All right, Kyle Wood, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a little while, but I had a great time with the Now conference presentation, and it's been kind of cool. I've been getting feedback from people saying they liked the presentations, both presentations. I think the funniest thing was I actually got an email from a teacher and then realized she teaches in the town where I live.
Oh,
and
wow.
So we've connected, I stopped by her school and helped her set up a game, and
nice.
It's been fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I guess though, can you, for people that missed it or for people that haven't watched it, can you talk about your classroom management presentation that was in the AfterPass, and then maybe just kind of give us an update on just how things are going for you? Is your classroom management still intact this far into the year?
Okay, so I have been very grateful to be part of the Now conference twice now. The first time I got to talk about gamification, and then people were like, yeah, but how does that work, playing all these games and getting kids wound up? And so I came back for the winter conference to talk about management and how I, keep things in line. It helps that I have this just dull, monotone, soporific voice that just knocks them out as soon as I'm talking. But I'd say at this point, let's be real, the wheels are falling off a little bit, but it's within a manageable range. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's in that phase where it's just the kids are tired. I can see them a little bit gassed on the projects, and it's just okay, can I be done? Which is, in my opinion, the worst question we can ask. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not, can I be better? It's just, can I be done? I'm going to be honest, I'm feeling the wear of the constant darkness that, I leave the house in the morning and I get home, it's still dark. So I'm fighting that a little bit and trying to find ways to bring a little bit more fun and cheer into the classroom.
Yeah, that's always good. I feel like just teachers everywhere are feeling that right now, where it's the like, can I just survive until spring break type thing, And that's just kind of the mode that everybody's in right now. So I don't think you're alone in feeling that. But I don't know. That's kind of why we like to do the Now conference at the end of January, beginning of February. Hopefully, like perks people up a little bit, gives them some new ideas, and like you said, we're always looking for more like fun and exciting things, which I guess brings us to, the podcast topic today, which is, getting kids engaged about, like diving into art history, making art history exciting and fun. And I think you do that about as well as anybody with the Arts Madness tournament. I know you've been doing this for a while now. You talked about it last year on the podcast, and I don't know if we can say bigger and better again this year, but you're running things back again. So can you just kind of talk about what's happening this year with Arts Madness, how teachers can find it, how they can participate? Just like, what do we need to know about this year's Arts Madness?
Okay, so I guess first off, just to make sure that everybody understands, the NCAA tournament, March Madness, bracketed tournament, single elimination, pitting teams head to head until there's just one ultimate winner. We've in all sorts of areas, we see people do like March Book Madness and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like as an art teacher, we have such a better pun. It was a crime that we were not doing something with this. So I started an Arts Madness tournament. It started in my classroom, just having kids vote on their favorite artists and artworks until we got down to one. But then as I started talking to other teachers and other people liked the idea, I started opening it up to other friends of mine in other schools in the district. And then with the podcast, it started to get a little bit bigger. And when you brought me on last year, it got a lot bigger. So thank you for that. This year, I'm really trying to do it well. I never thought I would get to the point where I had 64 episodes to cover all the different artists. But this year, I think I'm up to like 200 some odd episodes or something.
Wow. That's awesome.
I mean, some of those are like repeats and rehashing stuff, but I decided starting on Christmas, I would do daily mini episodes as a recap of all the different artists in the tournament.
Yeah.
So 64 episodes in 64 days, which is probably why the wheels are falling off right now for me in my classroom.
Fair.
Almost all of them I've found the time to record a new episode. Tomorrow's episode, I already had a short one, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gassed. My kids are starting to get a little bit sick. There's stomach stuff going around, and it's just like didn't have time for that one, but still I feel like it's a solid episode. Anyways, I've been putting out these daily mini episodes to try to prime everybody, get everyone to have that background knowledge on 64 different artists. And then starting the first week in March, people can vote for their favorites. The first week is always the toughest because it's like you've got 32 matchups.
Right. There's a lot to get through.
But the cool thing is it sparks these interesting conversations. Like, I think you will appreciate this. I did a random sort on the 64 artists and works.
Okay, that was going to be my question, how you're lining things up. Well, okay, sorry. I'm going to just interrupt here. Is it the same 64 artists as last year, or did you, replace a few of them?
Oh, I mixed it up. I replaced some. You got to change things up. Yayoi Kusama can only win so many years in a row.
True.
But
okay, and then secondly, the follow up to that with favorites like Kusama, are you seeding them, or is it just a random draw to see who's matched up against whom?
Okay, so I like a random draw. I've thought about this different ways because I thought it could be kind of cool to do like, one bracket of painters and one bracket of sculptors and, like sorted by medium or something like that. Yeah. But then I thought like just doing a random sort creates these really interesting matchups that get you thinking about like, how do we even evaluate such different works? So
Yeah.
one random matchup that came up in round one, we have Christo and Jean-Claude's Floating Piers up against Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. Which I'm sure you're laughing
I was gonna
immediately
say that
because you were my
those
guest
two.
on both of those episodes.
Gonna say those two have very specific meaning for me. So yeah, we talked in depth about both of those on Who Arted. So yeah, in case people don't get enough of me, then you can listen to me talk about those artworks as well.
But I think the cool thing is then you start to look at them and you know, both of them do have to do with like nature and the constructed environment and the sort of synthesis or the clash between them.
Right.
And so like I've found that doing these random sorts really does spark a lot of interesting conversations, and it spontaneously sparks debates among kids, which is really the point. I mean, the central goal is to get them to be, you know, talking about and engaged with the material and making the case for or against an artist, because, you know, that's how they're responding and getting at those core art standards that are not as fun for us to be teaching. Let's face it. We like to spend 99% of our time on the 25% that have to do with creation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep, very, very true. But like you said, you know, it's a good way to get kids engaged. And if you can get them, you know, evaluating and organizing and ranking just all those like higher order thinking skills, you know, all those things toward the top of Bloom's taxonomy. Like, I love being able to do that. And you just know there's so many great conversations going on, so much learning that's happening. And I think that's really valuable. And if you can do that when kids are engaged with it, then so much the better. I think that's awesome. So, can I share a little bit about, some stuff that I've done that kind of has to do with the ranking and stuff? So, you know, I don't have any elaborate tournaments ever set up in my classroom, but I always love to have kids rank artists or rank different paintings. So I always like to do Art History Friday. So just every Friday when kids come in, I have a different artist that I want to present and show their work to. And, you know, even if I don't like the artist that much, I pretend like I do, just because, you know, if I'm engaged, then kids are going to be engaged. And so usually find artists with interesting work or interesting stories. We go through a bunch of their work, and like, let's say, you know, we saw 10 different artworks from this particular artist. You know, I'll have the kids, write down like, hey, what are your top 3 that you saw today? Why did you like them? Or what are your top 5? And I feel like kids are just naturally engaged with that. Like, I think they kind of respond to that. And, you know, when they can kind of compare and contrast, like I said, we love what that has them do, but it also kind of engages them. And I'll do the same thing where, let's say we talked about all different impressionists, like, hey, do you rank, you know, Monet above Degas? Why not? And just getting those conversations going. And so, I guess question for you is just like, do you feel like conversations happen a little bit better when you're comparing and contrasting artworks rather than just saying, let's look at this painting or let's look at this artist? Are kids more engaged when you have 2 artists or 2 artworks that they're needing to compare?
Well, so I think there's a couple things there. It happens just differently. They're engaging on a different level. You know, I start every class with a cold read of a work of art. And like you, I try to find stuff that has like a fun fact or an interesting story. Like this week I was talking about Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles, which is the painting that almost brought down a government because the Australian people were not thrilled when the government bought it for like $2 million or whatever it was. But you know, when I drop a fun fact or something like that, you get a little bit of a reaction. But when there's a story that just plays out in the clash, in the competition. People are invested differently. I think partially because of the fact that by choosing something, I start off with like, make a prediction about which artist you think will win. And once they
Yeah.
have like their artist, they put on the
Yep.
jersey for their team.
Right.
It's a little bit different. There are stakes involved, even though like in my classroom, the stakes are a t-shirt or
Right.
as the tournament's getting bigger, now I'm sending out gift cards to people. But like it becomes a little bit different when they're arguing about it. And the thing is, in my normal classroom, I'm kind of pushing them to talk about it. And when the Arts Madness tournament is happening and the brackets are just up there in the hallway, I'm noticing kids pass by in the hallway and look, and they spontaneously have those conversations.
Yep, that's exactly what you want. I love that.
Can I just circle back for a second to one thing? You were talking about like the ranking in your classroom.
Yeah.
And I love that idea, but just to throw a little connection on there, another thing that I do is I give students the option to act as a curator instead of a creator, and use the Pick Collage app on our iPads. I have iPads in my classroom, but I set the challenge: put together a collection of 5 works by different artists that hit on the same theme. Or, something like that, where they're trying to think about like, oh, what are these pieces all about? And how are these related and stuff like that, which is another way of engaging and evaluating without it being like hierarchical.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. I don't know. My wheels are kind of turning too, just with all the possibilities that are there. But yeah, I really like finding that theme and doing that. Now, do you ever have kids, curate that and then want to do an artwork with that theme? Like, let's say they picked a really, really cool theme. They curate their half dozen paintings and then they say, oh, I need to do something with this theme, and then create their own work. Or does it stay contained usually?
It's usually separate. I've seen it happen a couple of times. I'm not gonna lie, the curator challenge is not always the most popular.
Well,
there are those quiet kids
you gotta work on the marketing for that. I love art history, and I'm not sure that I would want to do the curating challenge.
I know I'm not a good marketer, and this is like me at the height of my powers. Like, you should have seen the early days. It was rough. Like,
anybody
this
listening,
level of inflection is like supremely improved from what I used to have.
I love it. So, all right, if anybody's listening, they have a good idea on what we can call the curator challenge that maybe makes kids a little more excited, a little more engaged. I think that would be good. We'll crowdsource it and see if we can come up with something.
But back to your question, I mean, it is usually like those kids who are a little bit more engaged and more thoughtful about stuff. I have seen it happen sometimes where they have like, gone to read and relax for a little bit, and then they come back and they're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, I mean, just last week, this last week, I did have a student who came up to me and was like, I was seeing what we were doing. It's like the conversation with Jackson Pollock got the wheels turning, and like he didn't splatter paint. He actually made a marker drawing, but he was talking about the mark making on that and how it was, a different interpretation of those same ideas, which, kind of cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think that is really cool. Since we're just throwing ideas out there, I want to do another one. I always do this activity called Improve a Painting, which we're not actually improving, on any masterworks, but it is a fun way to kind of do things where I have some huge laminated prints in my classroom. I also laminated just smaller, like cutouts from magazines, things like that. And then I will let kids take dry erase markers or just like cheap tempera and just draw or paint on top of an artwork and talk about what they would change, what they would improve, either to make it better or just to make it funnier or more entertaining or something that's a little bit more fun to look at. And so they take a lot of, like boring, in their words, portraits from, like Renaissance age and whatever. Kids that are not excited about that kind of stuff, but they liven it up a little bit, which is pretty fun. And I feel like they're getting away with something as well. So just want to show that. Do you ever do anything with famous paintings or changing up famous paintings? Anything like that?
Okay, so first of all, I love that, like a dry erase marker over it, like that little. It's a little iconoclastic, right?
Yeah,
It's a
a
little bit like Marcel
mischievous.
Duchamp,
Yep, yep.
that's fun. I haven't done that specifically, but I have done back in the day. I had a friend of mine who taught. He and I used to have our schedules aligned much better, where we used to do stuff like challenging our students to like put work together that they would like. We would give the same prompt to both, and then we would compare the results from our different classrooms.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. And we did a challenge we called Steal This Art. There's that famous the famous Picasso quote, like, a good artist copy and great artists steal.
Right.
Although he supposedly, I think, stole that from T.S. Eliot. But the big idea behind that is to take something and reimagine it and make it your own, make your own version instead of simply a copy. And I had students create some of the most brilliant stuff I have ever seen. I still remember this one fourth grade girl worked so hard to make a tea set inspired by Hokusai's Great Wave. And the tsunami wave was pointed towards the spout on the teapot. I mean, really, that was just like brilliant. Like, when I saw her doing that, I was just like, okay, you just won this whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
So that's a fun thing that I've done. And I'll still do that in just my classroom, but it's really cool when you can find a buddy at another school, because what I found in doing that is it shows me like what I have really emphasized in my classroom, because you see some common strategies at play in your classroom, and then when you see what people in another building did with the same prompt, it's like, oh wow, okay, so there's another approach happening there, which is eye-opening and cool. To make it a little bit more contemporary and kill the slang of my children, I will say, like, let's do the imposter challenge, and I'll try to drop sus in there until they get tired of it. Just as my petty revenge, because I've had to hear that kind of stuff for so long.
Right.
But the imposter challenge, and now I'm like really formalizing it. I'm printing up little cards with different artworks so that I can have like 2 decks to draw from. And the idea is, like, think Roy Lichtenstein recreated masterpieces in the comic book style, right? Like he did the comic book Picasso and stuff. So then I started to think, like, well, what would it look like if, Vincent van Gogh painted Guernica, or, something like that. So I'm trying to make 2 decks of cards because, I'm a walking gimmick. I got to stay on brand and gamify everything. It's the marketing, right? You said it. I got to work on that marketing, right? So I'm trying to do a way of randomizing it. So they pull like, okay, here's my source image, and then in the style of, as just a creativity prompt that, like, I've done that with kids before and gotten great results. And now I'm just trying to formalize it and gamify it a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. No, I can see a deck like that. Famous artworks, then artists with distinct styles, mix and match. There's a lot of cool possibilities there. So cool. All right. Well, Kyle, we are running short on time, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to just sit here and banter back and forth with awesome ideas, we need to wrap it up. So just one more time before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find Arts Madness, when it's starting, what they need to know, what they need to do if they want to participate?
Okay, so everything that you would need is on my website, whoartedpodcast.com. Starting the first week in March, every week I'm going to have the form out there for people to vote. So I'm going to keep the link static, so just I'll change the page every week, so you can just go to whoartedpodcast.com/vote to vote for your favorites. I'll also have everything linked in the show notes for every episode. You can find Who Arted Weekly Art History for all ages on your favorite podcast app.
And you got the marketing for the podcast down. That's good.
I do. I feel like, I gotta work some more stuff in there. But right now you can listen to, I'm putting out daily mini episodes, and in the links, like I've got in the show notes, links to check out the brackets and, vote for your favorites. I've also got a link if you want to give a shout out to a favorite teacher. I'm giving away a $50 gift card to whoever gets the most shout outs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just like it's been cool. The podcast, I signed to a network last year. So just all the money I'm getting from advertisers, I'm just giving Amazon gift cards to people who correctly predict the winner, and a teacher who gets the most shout outs, just to
that's
pay
super
it forward
cool.
a little bit.
No, really, really like that. So very cool. Well, we will get as many people that directed there as we can. And then, hopefully good luck with everything. Hopefully it goes well. And we'll have to chat again in a couple months and see how everything wrapped up.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much once again. I always love coming on here. I love listening to the show, and it's a surreal experience to get to be on here. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. Appreciate having you on. Okay, 4 things I have for you before we go. If you haven't seen Kyle's classroom management presentation in the Afterpass for now, the one that we discussed, definitely check that out. Just a lot of really good information. I think Kyle's pretty entertaining. So if you like listening to him here, it's definitely worth checking him out there as well. Number 2, we will link to everything about Arts Madness, everything about Kyle's podcast, everything you need to know on what to do and how to participate. You can find it all in today's show notes. Third, I will also link in the show notes to the podcast about 17 Black artists you should know, the episode that I discussed at the beginning of the show. And then finally, one, I think just fun takeaway. Kyle mentioned the Picasso quote about good artists copy, great artists steal. And I just want to share the little tidbit and make sure everybody knows that Banksy, one of my favorite contemporary artists, took that quote from Picasso, engraved it into a rock, crossed out Picasso's name, and put his own. And, just the irony of making art by stealing a quote about stealing is pretty incredible. And just one of the many reasons that Banksy is so much better than Picasso. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you, as always, for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.